Motor vehicle liability insurance enhanced underinsured motorist coverage opt-out option. Favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Most of you may, if you've bought an auto insurance policy in the last 5 years, you were offered to opt in to enhanced uninsured motorist or increased uninsured motorist. What this bill does is it changes that. Now when you go to purchase a new policy, you'll be offered, it'll be in the policy unless you choose to opt out. So House Bill 128 requires a person who obtains a private passenger motor vehicle insurance policy at the time the policy is purchased to opt out of obtaining enhanced underinsured motorists through a waiver process instead of opting in. For a waiver to be effective under the bill, the insurer must give the insured written notice of the nature, extent, benefit, and cost of the level of the enhanced underinsured motorist coverage being waived. A waiver must be made in a form required by the Maryland Insurance Commissioner that meets certain criteria and includes certain information. Amendment 1 requires the waiver form to display information about the coverage in 14-point boldface type. Amendment 2 limits the opt-out selection process for enhanced underinsured motorist coverage under the bill to new policies issued on or after July 1st, 2024, and makes technical changes. Amendment 3 sunsets the bill after 5 years and requires the Maryland Insurance Administration to study and submit reports on the impact of converting enhanced underinsured motorist coverage from an opt-in coverage option to an opt-out coverage. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel.
Yeah, if the floor leader would yield, please.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator may proceed.
So I'm not real familiar. Who all does this apply to, and typically how much extra would the person be charged?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. It would apply to everyone purchasing a new auto policy other than Maryland Auto Insurance Fund. So it applies to everyone purchasing new auto insurance. The cost varies. It depends on the number of cars you have on the policy, the age of the drivers, previous claim history, but it could vary anywhere from like $15 to $100. It will depend on the policy coverages.
And what is the person getting for this extra $15 to $100? What coverage does it provide?
It covers a couple of things. One thing is it's enhanced underinsured motorist. So if you already have, say, 60 on your policy, 30,000 per person, 60,000, you would have that 30,000 on top of the person that hit you. So let's just say the person that hit you only carried 30,000. Now you'd have an additional 30. But it also will match whatever your limits are. So if you, for instance, carry 100, 300, then the enhanced underinsured motorist will match your liability of 100, 300.
And why are we making it opt-in? I mean, if I had the option to get it currently, why are we changing it to opt-in? Because I would imagine a lot of people don't go through their insurance policy very carefully, and this would be just an extra charge to them.
Well, and that's why there's a form that the agent must review with them, or if it's online, there will be a form that you'll go through and sign so that you understand the coverage is there unless you opt out. The concern is only about 2% of the people are choosing to opt in, and there are people that feel this is a really important coverage and that requiring opt out is a better choice.
So just walking through the process, so quarterly or whatever, I get insurance forms, and it's probably anywhere from 10 to 20 pages they send me. So every quarter or 6 months, they're going to send me a form that I have to fill out and send it back to
No,
them?
only at the time of purchase of a new policy. So if you don't purchase a new auto policy, if you stay with your current carrier, you won't see this form. It's only on the purchase of new insurance.
Okay, so a new person or a new policy. So I've been with mine for probably 30 years, so I won't get this form and I won't be opted in.
No, you will not. That was in the original bill, and we did change that.
All right. Questions on the 3 committee amendments? Any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 128 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 248, Delegate Forbes, Baltimore County Class B ECF/DS Education Conference Facility Dining Services Licensed Towson University. Favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 248 is a local bill that is the same as Senate Bill 347, which unanimously passed the Senate. The bill authorizes the Baltimore County Board of License Commissioners to issue a Class B education conference facility, dining service, beer, wine, and liquor license to an individual who is authorized by Towson University. The bill makes other conforming changes to specify that the provisions of the license apply to either UMBC or Towson University. The bill has the support of the Baltimore County Senate delegation. There are no amendments, and I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 248 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 869, Delegate Boyce, Department of the Environment Study on Death Care and Funeral Practices, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, when individuals die, there are many choices available in dealing with the remains. There are some traditional choices that we all know about, and there are some new options coming in. And very important, some of them have impact on the environment. Therefore, House Bill 869 requires the Maryland Department of the Environment, in consultation with the Maryland Department of Health and the Maryland Department of Labor, to conduct a study of the impacts of death care and funeral practices on the environment and public health of the state. The study must examine the environmental and public health impacts of, I'll say a few of the traditional ones first: casket and vault burial, mausoleum burial, casket-only burial, natural or green burial, cremation, alkaline hydrolysis or water cremation, resumation or natural water cremation, and natural organic reduction. Mr. President, colleagues, there are no amendments. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Senator from the 35th District?
Yes, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield for a question?
Yes.
Senator, may proceed.
So I was looking at the fiscal note, and you mentioned natural organic reduction. Would that be what we would consider to be composting?
Yes.
So that is included in this study then?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, I had a bill earlier this year where had to do with manure and trying to get other organics like food scraps added into it. And I know MDE had concerns about that. So I'm just wondering what their, if they're all right with this. I was just curious.
Yes, it's a study. This is a study to determine the impact of all of these choices.
Okay, so why was that number 8, natural organic reduction, included in the study? Does that look like a policy thing we're going to have to deal with in the future?
Well, it's a very good question, Senator. We had another House bill that came over in the Finance Committee that dealt specifically with organic reduction. And the testimony it took a lot of time, and there was a lot of interest in this new way of burial. And one of our concerns in the committee was the use of the organic remains in gardens, because witnesses talked about after the natural organic reduction where individuals are layered with straw and different organic matter, and over a period of a month or two, a temperature, I believe, 127 or 137 degrees, slowly organically decompose. They have like a pickup truck bed full of organic matter. It's a lot of organic matter, and the witnesses said, well, in some states, like I think Washington State has this, they take it and they spread it in the forest, and we were concerned, well, can they spread it in yards and gardens? And we wouldn't like that to happen. So that's something that we looked at, and this bill will study those practices and report back to us as far as what we should and should not allow, and also, you know, the labeling of these products, which might show up at Home Depot or Lowe's. We never know. So it's a very important issue for us to really consider and look at.
Thank you for your explanations. I appreciate it, Senator.
Welcome.
All right, on the favorable committee report, any further discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just curious, typically after we study things and we work group things, we do something afterwards. Could you just, once we get this information, what are we doing with it?
Well, it will inform how we approach some of these new techniques that need our approval to execute in Maryland.
Okay.
All right. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd district. Uh-oh.
I had not.
Chair
I had
recognizes
not
the
planned
senator
to
from the
stand
42nd
up.
district.
This is unexpected. But so with these composted remains of humans, is it possible that they would be placed in places where animals, dogs, cats, possums could eat them?
It's possible. That's why we are taking this cautious approach and authorizing this study, Maryland Department of Health, the Environment, and others to say, hey, you know, what are the constraints? Because if there are no constraints, anything is possible. I share the story in the committee with another related bill, saying I went to Home Depot a while ago, and I saw this 40-pound bag of compost, garden compost, and I read the ingredients. I try to find where did this compost originate, and I couldn't find it on the bag. So I went home. I didn't buy the material. I went home and I researched. That particular bag of compost in Maryland came from Wisconsin sewer plant. And so, you know, the labeling we have to look at. So it's possible if we don't really put good constraints on these techniques, it could end up in Lowe's or Home Depot and in your vegetable garden.
Well, one final question. To move from the macabre to the legal, don't we have a law on the books that prevents the mutilation of human remains?
I don't have that answer, and okay, are there laws? The question, could you repeat that question, Senator?
Sure. Aren't there laws on the books of Maryland which prevent the mutilation of human remains, which would, unless we change them, prevent composting human bodies?
The answer is yes, they are.
Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. This, to me, just to say, is kind of out there. Woo! But anyway, and I know it's a study. I've heard that more than once, that it's a study. But I think before we make a study, I think we need to study this study, because I think this is reaching, Mr. President, and I'd like to recommit this to the committee, please, if we could.
The senator has moved to recommit the bill. Let's hear from the floor leader on the motion.
Yeah. I would, Mr. President, urge the body to reject that motion, because we need to gather information on this emerging field in death care. And the faster we get the study done and the environmental impacts, the health impacts, the more we want to be innovative in Maryland. We just don't want to say no to everything. But before we say yes, we want to understand the consequences and the maybe unintended consequences. So I think it's very important that we move forward with this study in order to understand that, so we can deal appropriately with advances in this technology.
Okay, question before the body is whether to recommit the bill to committee. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if the floor leader might yield
The floor
for
to yield.
a couple of questions.
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you a question. Right now, we incinerate human remains. Is that accurate?
I think it's called cremation, Senator?
Correct. Cremation. And very often we take those incinerated remains.
So, Senator, just very quickly,
Yes.
so the motion to recommit is debatable, but only as to the purpose of the motion, not the
So
underlying question.
I'm on the underlying question. Would you like me to sit down and...
If we dispose of the motion, then we will see where we are. Maybe we will compost the motion. We'll see. All right. Yes. Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
I want to, and I stress this, Mr. President, I'd like to have a roll call, please. Thank you.
A roll call on the motion. All right. Any further discussion on the motion to recommit? Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very important study. We have a bill in our committee right now about the organic cremation, they call it. There's some legal issues with referring to it as organic cremation. I think this is an important study, and I think the floor leader's done a terrific job explaining it. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. On the motion, further discussion, Chair recognizes Senator from Prince George's on the motion.
Yeah, on a motion, I'd like to resist the motion. I'd like to see you go forward with it. There's some very interesting things that you said. So just bury the motion and let's just move on.
All right. All right. On the motion, Senators requested a roll call vote. This is a motion to recommit. So a green vote sends it back to committee. A red vote keeps it on the floor. Are we clear? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the negative, the senator's motion fails. The favorable committee report remains before the body. Let's go to the senator from Montgomery County on the favorable report. One moment, just make sure we're still on the favorable report, I believe. Okay.
There we go.
Senator from Montgomery County on the report.
On the report. Thank you, Mr. President. And again, thank you to the floor leader. When last we were talking, we were discussing that very often the incinerated remains are turned over to family members, and family members very often will take those to a place that was meaningful to the deceased, and they will sprinkle those ashes into the water, onto the land, where perhaps fish may eat the ashes, and raccoons and possums may come across the ashes, but it is not entirely different than the processes that we do now. Would I be correct in saying that this bill is a reflection of the fact that we're at a point in time where we're realizing we have a finite amount of real estate, and yet our planet keeps reproducing and reproducing new human beings, and at some point in time we may run out of real estate to bury those human beings, so maybe we are at an appropriate time to look at what alternatives may be, and this is just a study to be reviewing. This, and I will share with you, I know I have received a number of emails from constituents who are saying this is how they would like to see their remains addressed, is through organic composition or decomposition, pardon me. And so the whole point here is let's start looking at, in the 21st century, alternatives to what we have done historically. Would that be an accurate assessment?
That is very accurate, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader would yield.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
So I appreciate you standing up on this bill and sharing all the information, and I appreciate my good friend from Montgomery County, his concern about space and environmental matters. I'm just curious, though. I mean, I'm pretty sure when your body is cremated, thankfully the Earth doesn't have a 1600 degree temperature, or we all would not. We'd all be composted. But the difference being is he makes a very valid point. There's a process. We cremate the body, the bones are burned into ash, and then they're spread throughout. Is that correct? They can be spread throughout after being properly cremated. Is that correct?
Okay, and you're referring to cremation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So cremation, the temperature above, I believe, 1,200 degrees, the entire body is reduced to a few ounces of ash, and that's correct.
Yes, thank you. So through this other process, though, is it fair to say that we couldn't do the same thing that my good friend from Montgomery County said, which is spread ash around along the beaches and the waters, because we'd be sprinkling big chunks of bone?
Senator, which process you're talking about?
Through this process of the composting of human remains.
Okay, well, that is the study. And could I just add that with you're comparing cremation and the composting technique.
Yes.
Cremation, high temperature, few ounces of ash. With the human composting, the testimony on the related bill said the bones are still there. They take it out and do something else with the bones. So you have a different procedure. That's why we need to study all these techniques and make sure they align with our values.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield for a question?
Floor yield?
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator may proceed.
Just a couple of questions about this. How would someone sign up to be part of this study? Would someone sign up their loved one to be composted and scattered throughout the forest?
Well, this is not, Senator, this is not a study of the procedures from a chemical or biological or medical perspective. It's from the perspective of the Maryland Department of Health, Maryland Department of the Environment, as far as all these techniques is concerned. So it's not like a study at NIH where you call for human volunteers. And so that's not the purpose of this study.
So are the guidelines established in this study? I would say this, having been contacted by a funeral director about this, the one thing they said was, during COVID, if a person had died in a hospital from COVID, that person was sealed in a plastic bag because they were worried about possible contamination. Now my question is, people die from different types of diseases. Some of these diseases are potentially very infectious. Are the guidelines set in this study so that if somebody dies from a certain disease, that body cannot be composted, something would happen, that it wouldn't be spread in the forest where people would go walking, go do whatever, and all of a sudden find themselves being exposed to something that had killed other people?
Yeah, thank you for that detailed question, Senator. So your first part, the funeral directors want this study. They came in favor of this study. They want this, and to understand all the criteria and all the possible consequences. And so could you say your second part of your question again, please?
Contagious diseases such as tuberculosis, such as mad cow disease, certain things that are very contagious to humans that require the 1,600 degrees to be able, before someone can be cremated.
Yeah, so this is why the study is required, to really determine the parameters, because you have those diseases. And I think you're alluding to another bill that came over from the House that really wanted to move forward with the organic cremation, and the issues with that were the temperature of the organic cremation is that high enough to kill certain diseases. And there were some witnesses saying it's not so. So basically, this is just a study. I want to stay focused on this bill, which authorized a study to really explore all these parameters, very important parameters, which we all care about.
Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City and County.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, I want to thank the committee for this bill, passing this bill and this study, and also being a member of the Environment committee, this is important. So looking at the environment, my understanding is, I guess I said, should I ask the floor leader? Could I ask a floor leader question?
The floor to yield.
Yes, Mr.
Senator may proceed.
So the point of this study is to evaluate the environmental impact of all the various ways that individuals can dispose of corpses, correct?
Environmental and health.
And health, environmental and I'm sure you heard perhaps some testimony that, and why the delegate is putting this bill forward is that this is an issue in our district where a crematorium wanted to be located very close to a community. And at the moment, isn't it true that at the moment there really isn't any consistent research that specifically looks at our laws and how we regulate in Maryland law the burning of a corpse, which, by the way, has the same amount of gases that go out by driving a car. But is that correct? We're trying to establish it. Just yes.
So we need permits for crematories, and they are regulated in certain respects.
Right. But the committee is interested in additional public health and environmental impacts. At the moment, those aren't necessarily criteria that have to be adhered to under our current permitting process. Is that correct? Right. Thank you. So again, I support the adoption of the committee's favorable report. Thank you.
All right, the question remains on the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Floor leader, yield. So I think I'm on an island over here, one of the only ones that probably support this. Whether you like it or not, death is going to come for all of us. And how are you going to deal with it? And serving on finance for many years, we dealt with issues dealing with cemeteries. They run out of money, the perpetuity funds, they get run down. And, as the senator from Montgomery County said, that there's more of us coming behind us, and we got to figure out what we're going to do once we do, pass on. And I get up because this is a bill, this is a House bill, so it's amendable on third reader. So I'm trying to figure out, I just have a couple questions to see if I'm going to have any amendments on third reader. And it's a study, and that's the issue, correct? We're not coming in this saying, and I understand the senator from Baltimore City said generally when we study something, the idea is you study it to come back with a bill to actually adopt it and make it regulation. Do we have anything in the study to kind of address some of the issues that have been brought up, such as the animals or anything else, or is it still kind of wide open? And I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the bill in front of me, so.
Yeah, good question, Senator. There are other bills now in our body that want to authorize a lot of these procedures. But this is just a study to really, being a science major in college, going through a lot of science classes, you never really get to the conclusion before you study all the ramifications of it. So we just don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say, well, we'll only look at X, Y, Z. This is a broad-ranging bill to study the environmental and health impact of all of these practices that are currently
well, okay. I think you hit what I wanted to make sure of, environmental and health impact, to address some of the concerns that have been brought up. So I appreciate your time, and I'll probably look at possibly some amendments for third reader. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the report, any further discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel on the report.
Thank you. If the floor leader would yield.
The floor to yield.
Yes,
Senator
Mr.
may
President.
proceed.
Has been brought up, a lot of times with task force and studies, some people are concerned that you have a predetermined outcome. And so I was looking at the composition of who's on this study, and it's just the Department of Environment, I believe, and they can bring in some other groups. And when I look at what the study is trying to do, you said it's based on the environmental impacts and public health, which is looking as what is best, with as a casket or composition for the environment and so forth. Is there anything in this bill as far as the family's needs and what they believe is best for the family, or is this strictly from an environmental standpoint and public health?
Yeah, one second. Okay. So families will be looking at alternative ways of last rights and processes for their loved ones with all these choices. And so this study will basically get to the environmental and health impacts of these choices that are available, which will inform us, the Maryland General Assembly, and the decisions we make on what to authorize in Maryland and any guardrails we need to put up around those practices.
Okay, as far as I see in the study, it's focused on the environmental benefits and the public safety, and the families are not included, at least in the language of the bill. So I could imagine the study coming back and saying, you know, is a casket better or composting better for the environment? I can see how that study would go in those recommendations back to the body. And you said this is done in other states, so just real briefly, can you explain the process of a decomposing body and how long does it take and where do they store these bodies while they're being decomposed?
Senator, I'm not prepared to give that detailed analysis. I'm not in the death care business, so I'll be stepping out of my lane, to be honest.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But the thing is, we had bills coming through. I know that Washington State was mentioned as a state that this is currently authorized, I think, for the last 2 years, and they're dealing with a lot of these issues now that that the people are trying to do with the composting and stuff like that. But I can't go into a detailed analysis like you just asked because that's outside my lane.
Okay, and as the former senator just got up, or former speaker just got up, I may be bringing forward an amendment to balance this study so it's not just an environmental study that also brings in the families and their concerns of how their remains are taken care of. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator, Chair recognizes Senator from Prince George's on the favorable report.
Yeah, for a question.
Before
a question and comment.
Senator may proceed.
As I understand the bill, people are going to be around the table and you're going to discuss certain options. It would not affect any family unless they choose one of the options that you all come back with, whether it's composting. The family would have to choose. Just as it is today, a lot of persons, more people that I'm burying today are choosing cremation purely because it's financial. Most funerals will run you between 15 and some as much as 40, 50,000, depending on what they do. And simple cremation is about $1,000. They're making decisions for different. You couldn't. I don't know what a clergy would be doing on your committee because we're really not going back to try and deal with a family that has chosen one of your options. And I want to be sure that it's a choice. There's nothing you're pushing on people so that, because I would be very much concerned if you were saying you have to bury or you have to expose the remains that way. You're giving options and information, health and environment, and that's pretty much the scope of it. Is that correct? And it's a study. I'm sorry, it's a study. So what we can do is if we had something we wanted to add, we can add on through an amendment, and I don't plan on doing that at all. I think it's a good bill as it is, but for my gentleman, for my friends, if he wants to put somebody for family planning or counseling, I don't know what that would do if a family says, I choose this. I choose A, B, C, or D to expose my loved one's remains. And if so, there are issues. I want to know because I just want to deal with it, so we'll talk. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Question remains on the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City and County on the report.
Thank you. The floor leader yield for a question.
Senator may proceed.
I'm reading the bill, and I thought some of the specifics that was in the original bill, the bill as drafted, but I see that I just want to make sure that it's correct. It seems that the specifics about on lines 3 through 20 of the bill that really make the study very specific around potential policy areas around impact of land use, soil contamination, water quality, and air quality, and as well as energy, chemicals, and materials, that all of that has been stricken from this. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you restate?
No, am I reading it correctly that the parameters needed to have a study where we can actually determine some policy and make it very clear about what the study should and should not cover was stricken from the bill? Like, it came over, the House struck those specifics.
That is correct.
Correct. Okay, so I would be interested in making an amendment.
All right. Question is on the favorable committee report. It's a House bill, so we can take it up on third reading too for amendments. Any further discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any current amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 869 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1111, Delegate Phillips, Baltimore County Insurance, Certificates of Guarantee for County Bond Requirements, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 1111 authorizes but does not require Baltimore County to honor certificates of guarantee issued by a nonprofit association of contractors or its wholly owned subsidiary in order to satisfy certain county bond requirements. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1111 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. All right, let's go to the report of the Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 48. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 16, Delegate J. Lewis, Primary and Secondary Education, Title IX Notice, Hear Our Voices Act, favorable.
House Bill, Chair recognizes Senator from Frederick City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires each public school to inform students, faculty, staff, and parents regarding who serves as the Title IX coordinator for the school, the process in place for filing a sexual misconduct complaint, and the support measures that are in place for an individual who files a sexual misconduct complaint, and how to access the support measures. Colleagues, you may recall that Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any federally funded education program or activity. The principal objective of Title IX is to avoid the use of federal money to support sex discrimination in education programs and to provide citizens with effective protection against these practices. There is no fiscal note and there were no adoptions. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 185 is hereby ordered passed. Wait,
No.
I'm sorry.
Nope, there we go.
House Bill 16 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 185, Delegate Ebersol, Non-Public Schools and Child Care Providers, Corporal Punishment Prohibition, favorable.
All right. Corporal punishment here. Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore City and County as the floor leader.
I was feeling a little buried. HB 185, non-public schools and child care providers corporal punishment. This bill ensures that the same standards that are in public schools for disciplining young people are also throughout the state. It prohibits the institutions to develop a policy around. It doesn't determine specific practices or what they can or cannot do. This bill is a first step of asking them to develop a policy about prohibiting corporal punishment or about corporal punishment. The regulations will be adopted by the state board. There are no committee amendments, so I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 185 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 243, Delegate Corman, Baltimore City Young Readers Program and Young Readers Matching Grant Program Alteration, Young Readers Program Act of 2023, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 10 as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. As amended, this bill is substantially the same as Senate Bill 300, as passed unanimously by the Senate. The bill transfers the Baltimore City Young Readers Program and the Young Readers Matching Grant Program from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victims Services to the Maryland State Library Agency, and requires the state librarians to administer both programs. The bill requires the governor to include $350,000 rather than $250,000 in the annual budget bill for the Young Readers Matching Grant Program. Additionally, the bill authorizes public libraries to apply for program grants under the Young Readers Matching Grant Program. By December 1, 2024, every other year thereafter, the Maryland State Library Board must report to the General Assembly on the effectiveness of the Young Readers Matching Grant Program and collect statistics and other information necessary for this purpose. There's one amendment. The amendment makes technical corrections to the bill. I move the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 243 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 325, Delegate Terrassa, Provision of Veterinary Services Practice of Veterinary Medicine and Rabies Vaccines, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Frederick as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, House Bill 325 is identical to Senate Bill 390, as unanimously passed by the Senate. This bill requires the State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners to establish an expedited process to authorize out-of-state veterinary practitioners to become licensed in practice veterinarian medicine in the state. The bill also requires the Secretary of Health to allow registered veterinarian technicians or other staff, clinical staff, who work in or for an animal shelter or animal control facility to administer rabies vaccines subject to specified conditions as outlined in the licensing process. There are two committee amendments. One is technical. The other conforms the bill to the Senate cross-file by adding language concerning the licensing of animal control facilities that administer rabies vaccines. By the way, this second amendment does meet with the requirements of our state veterinarian association as well as the board that regulates them. So I move for the adoption of the two committee amendments as well as the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 325 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 950, Delegate Stein, Maryland Native Plants Program, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 10 as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President and colleagues. House Bill 950 is nearly identical to Senate Bill 836, as unanimously passed by the Senate. The bill establishes the Maryland Native Plant Program administered by the Maryland Department of Agriculture and the University of Maryland Extension. Among other things, the program shall involve the creation of a voluntary certification program for growers and retailers of native plants, a Maryland native marketing program, and a Maryland native plant website. There's one committee amendment. The amendment delays the bill's effective date to July 1, 2024 to coincide with the provision of the funding of the program. Move the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 950 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1219, the Speaker, Maryland Education Shortage Act of 2023, favorable with 4 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City and County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill starts a major initiative to expand alternative teaching certificate programs to address the fact that we need to improve and increase the number of trained teachers in Maryland. It creates a new educator recruitment, retention, and diversity dashboard. It reforms some of our teaching fellows programs, and it codifies other programs. Through these programs, Maryland should be able to make real meaningful progress towards recruiting and retaining high-quality, diverse teachers from pre-K through 12. There are generally, the bill changes the alternative teacher preparation program, establishes some criteria for early childhood in lieu of completing a teacher training practicum. It requires teacher preparation programs to set minimum goals. It provides that the high staff qualifications for publicly funded pre-K teachers must begin to be implemented in a certain time. And it establishes a teacher development and retention program, makes some changes to the Janet Hoffman and Loan Assistant Repayment Program. Additionally, there are 4 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 makes a technical name to the bill's title. It calls it the Maryland Educator Shorter Reduction Act of 2023. This is just a clarification of the intent of the bill. Amendment number 2 alters the requirements for the alternative teacher prep. It authorizes MSDE to establish a criteria. It allows for institutions of higher education as well as nonprofits to be able to establish teacher education, alternative teacher education programs, but these programs still must be approved by the department. It also authorizes MDE to establish various criteria to allow for an individual to use education as a way, education and experience in lieu of some specific training practicums. And finally, it moves the implementation date for the high-quality publicly funded pre-K to the 27-28 year. Amendment number 3 adds mental health professionals serving in public schools to be eligible for the Janet Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program. It makes some additional eligibility requirements and expansions. Number 4, it alters the requirements for the Teacher Fellow Program, and it adds some language providing for these teacher programs. This is a very, very popular bill. It was voted out of the committee unanimously with these proposed amendments. I move for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? The chair recognizes the senator from District 1 on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question for the floor leader?
Yes, question for the floor leader, please, sir. So I'm new here to the Senate, but I think across the hall we passed a thing called the blueprint. And then 10 years earlier, we passed a thing called Thornton. Why is this so needed if we've passed 2 important pieces of legislation in past that I heard the chair of Budget and Tax talk about $800 million and 800 million the next year, I don't understand why we're getting a second bite at the apple again. And I believe a lot of this stuff that you talked about was part of the blueprint.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that question. Not unlike our country's constitution, things change over time, meanings change, context change, condition changes. Documents aren't static. Maryland law is not static. The blueprint was a law. It was very good, but it's imperfect, like much of what we do. And so this specifically is addressing and is building out in the blueprint a very specific, targeted program to address our current needs that existed prior to COVID, but certainly are exacerbated by it.
I think the chairman of the Kerwin Commission had talked about all those. I just don't understand how we're so soon after passing this, and we haven't even paid for the implementation, but yet we're coming back again for more. I would have thought we were smarter than this. I just don't understand. But thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I understand, and sometimes very specifically in the blueprint, some of the critique was that, well, how are we going to do this? And so the blueprint sent out the general model, the sort of large framework, and what we will be doing through this legislation and probably other is filling that in. And specifically, this is giving scholarships as incentives to achieve the high quality, diverse teacher, that diverse body of teachers that we need in our schools.
Well, thank you for answering that. Mr. President, I do believe that there were other issues that were discussed during the whole Kerwin Commission and issues that did not get into the final blueprint. I look forward to this body entertaining some future legislation that might address some of the smaller school systems where we currently in Garrett County are talking about closing 4 elementaries out of 8 elementary schools that we offer in Garrett County. And it is directly tied to the blueprint and the cost that it is going to occur to local. And so look forward to talking about that in a future session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Chair Kennedy, Senator from 28th District on the amendments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. A question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? Appears so.
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a very important bill which will aid tremendously, I believe, in getting Maryland students, Maryland residents into the educational profession. And every Monday, a large amount of teachers from my district comes to Annapolis, and they kind of latch onto this bill and say this is really a really excellent bill. And I got calls from media sources for interviews about this bill. So I had to pull it out and read it. I was going through the original bill, and it talked about the teachers in section, I think around page 17, for the Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship, that program. And as the bill originally came in, it required for the, which is tremendously lucrative scholarship, required a 3.3 GPA for high school students and like a 1100 SAT score for a qualification for this scholarship. And there's a lot of debates going on now on the standardized tests and their fairness, not just from a racial, from a cultural perspective also. And quite a few schools have eliminated the SAT requirement for admissions. Schools like NYU, Cornell, GW, Princeton, Rice, Stanford, Tufts, Brown, California Institute of Technology, Columbia, Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, on and on. They say, hey, you know, we recognize the biasness of the SAT, so So basically, is that provision still in the bill or was taken out?
It's out. We agree with you, and it's no longer there. You have to just make progression, but there's none of those requirements are there. They've been stripped from the bill.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, actually, the House made those. So we
the House
accepted them.
removed those. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right. On the 4 amendments, any further discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1219 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. We will stick with Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 49. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 11, Delegate Stewart, Private Well Safety Act of 2023, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Frederick as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this bill is to develop a process for the testing of private wells that could potentially be contaminated with long-term very negative health consequences. Specifically, what the bill does is by December 31st, 2026, it requires the Maryland Department of the Environment to adopt regulations to identify a list of additional standards for water quality testing that the department deems necessary for each county or a specific area within a county. Additionally, subject to the availability of funding and in consultation with the Department of Information Technology, the department would utilize an online portal to receive specific water quality testing results, upload certificates to ensure that the water is drinkable, and other water quality testing criteria. And it would also provide public access to that information. The bill also establishes water quality testing requirements for contracts for the sale of real property that has a private or domestic well supply. There were 2 committee amendments. One is technical. The second one provides for information sharing between the Department of the Environment, the Department of Health, and local health departments. The amendment also requires the Department of Environment to conduct a study of long-term financing resources for further monitoring and analysis of groundwater resources in the state. I move for adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader would yield for question. This bill, is this different than how we passed the Senate bill out of here, or is it similar or the same?
Excellent question. Thank you. This bill is different than the original way we passed the Senate bill out of here. MDE had some concerns about establishing within the bill a fund to test and remediate water prior to acquiring that funding source. So the language in the bill was changed to say that we would look collaboratively for a funding source before we included the fund in the bill. The other thing that changed in the bill was more collaboration with other departments. For example, the Department of Health, that's a natural, local health departments, and also to work with IT, because if you're going to develop a database, certainly you'd want to work with the IT department to do that. So those are the changes since we originally passed it.
Okay, thank you. So the second parts of your changes make sense. I'm concerned about this. Doesn't this establish, it's a mandate for the counties to come up with their own plan, but it also is going to establish that every homeowner with a private well has to do this, or what's the mandate there?
Only upon the sale of a property. If you have a private well, you have to disclose that. Now, the purchaser can opt out. of any kind of testing, but you do have to disclose that and test it. You have to test it, I believe, every 3 years.
Is that, and it's not required now to?
Correct.
Well, when you say you have to test it every 3 years, not when, sorry, Mr. President, when saying that it has, the bill says it has to be tested every 3 years, so even if you're not selling the property, you do it, the homeowner needs to test every 3 years?
The homeowner does have to test every 3 years, but you also have to disclose the testing at the point of sale. But this also applies to larger dwelling units that are serviced by private wells.
And so what's the cost for that test every 3 years? Is this something the counties will work with people on, or is this something you have to go pay?
That's a longer term issue, but I understand the cost can be anywhere between $25 and $200.
Okay, but so right now, though, someone's not required to do this, but they would be moving forward.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. On the amendments, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is amended, is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 11 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 90, Delegate Foley, Local Government Regulatory Powers, Regulation of Invasive Bamboo, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Frederick as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes the governing body of a county or a municipality to regulate through an ordinance invasive bamboo, including prohibiting a person from selling invasive bamboo, planting invasive bamboo, or allowing invasive bamboo to grow on the property of the person without proper upkeep and appropriate containment measures, including barriers or trenches. The bill also authorizes the governing body of a county or municipality to provide for the enforcement of an ordinance adopted under the bill. This is enabling legislation, and there are two types of bamboo. This only applies to the invasive type. There are no committee amendments. Therefore, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, chair recognizes the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader could yield for a question, please.
Floor to yield.
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. I certainly understand the first two parts, although not a big fan of having the government regulating this type with respect to allowing the invasive bamboo to grow. So you want to regulate selling it, planting it. But how, my question is with respect to how is a government going to regulate allowing invasive bamboo to grow?
Well, since it's enabling legislation, I would imagine that code enforcement for the local jurisdiction would establish a process, and usually it's complaint-driven. They would enforce it like they do any other ordinance.
So, complaint-driven. So, for instance, a neighbor sees another neighbor that has a bunch of bamboo that has been growing on their own property. They could potentially report this to the government. They would come out and, according to this bill, depending on how it's set up, could actually fine somebody?
They could find somebody because this invasive bamboo could actually uproot fences or pavement or other structures. That's why it's called invasive.
I understand, and I did see the pictures on the testimony, but this is also on private property, right? I mean, so if the bamboo is on my property, why is the government coming out and then telling me that I have to do something? Is there an incentive to do this? Is there payment to help eradicate this?
I know homeowner associations currently regulate these types of invasive plants.
Yeah, but that would be through like as you said, a homeowners association where they collect money from all the residents that live in that association, and they're able to then use that to maintain that. Do you know how do you eradicate invasive bamboo?
I do not know how you eradicate invasive bamboo. If
I can tell you how
had
we do it
I'd
on the
cut it
Eastern
down.
Shore. It involves a lot of gasoline, a match, and usually a case of beer to watch it. But that's how it's done out there. I mean, that's why I'm interested. I've seen it taken down in a number of neighbors' houses, how they get rid of this stuff. But is there another way of getting rid of this other than burning it down? And I don't know if that's legal or not, but I wouldn't think so. But it's how it happens.
There's probably another way, but we will defer to the local jurisdictions to develop their regulations and their corrective action.
I guess my point is that there probably are very other expensive ways. I don't know if it involves trying to dig this out. I don't know if it involves some type of pesticides or herbicides or something that take this out and restrict it from growing. And I understand that this is enabling, but I am very concerned that we could enforce a civil penalty on potentially a resident, a low-income resident that might not be able to control this on their own, and some enforcement officer could go out and see this bamboo on their property and say, the General Assembly has passed a law that allows us now to come in, tell you there's too much bamboo, and now we can fine you.
This is not all that different from the authority local jurisdictions have if your grass is too high. I mean, I can remember as an older woman for the city of Frederick, code enforcement getting complaints when somebody's grass was too high, and they actually had the ability to go out and give the resident a notice and fine them if they didn't take care of it. So this is not that different.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit easier to resolve mowing somebody's lawn for them than it is to try to eradicate this species of bamboo. Again, I think it would be more helpful if we knew what the practices were to eradicate this before we give government the authority, local government the authority to set some standard, and then more importantly, to allow them to put a civil fine on this.
Yeah. Thank you for your thoughts. The bill doesn't really address how to eradicate this bamboo. And in fact, from the original conversations, the fines were actually reduced. And local government certainly has the option of a warning prior to implementing any fines.
All right. Okay. Well, I appreciate your responses. Not necessarily in agreement with them, Mr. President. I think this is probably a step too far that the General Assembly has gone to. If there really are concerns about this, I think the government could take care of it, local government could find a way to take care of it. I just don't like the fact that we are specifically writing in the legislation that they can go out and establish fines without finding a way to possibly assist them first. And if we came out with the legislation first that says, okay, we got to find a way to resolve this issue. You know, we put together funds for a lot of different things here in Annapolis where you can go in and grab some money and it will help you get rid of it. But to just be able now to go around and look at somebody's property and say, you've got too much bamboo on it, here's a fine, you know, without any type of more restrictions on how this would work, I think it's just going a little bit too far. Thank you.
All right, on the report, thank you, Senator. On the report, Chair recognizes Senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just like to maybe possibly answer a question that was brought about how to kill it.
Senator, may proceed.
Mowing and option 1, mowing and digging up the root system. Option 2, using heat by burning or boiling bamboo. Applying diesel or gasoline. Number 4, applying vinegar. And number 5, using herbicides. Now, one other thing related to this I'd just like to mention is we do have, you know, all over the state noxious weed programs. So say if you have farms next to each other and there's Johnson grass going up, if it's growing on one farm and not controlled, that seed can blow over to the farm next to it and cause that farmer a lot of issues. So I think maybe we need to look at this a little through the lens of through like a noxious weed type deal. So just wanted to put those 2 cents in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Apparently in Kent County, they got a different approach. They, natty light's not included, all right. All right. House on the favorable committee report. Any further discussion? If not, yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield?
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
So this is my concern. Several years ago, we had a neighbor that planted bamboo, actually on the south side of our property and on the east side of our property, and now it has grown into our property. I'm 3 feet deep of bamboo. So am I going to be held responsible if my county passes some code banning bamboo because it's on my property, but we don't know how to control it? I like the burning idea, though. I was going to see if I could hire Senator Urgy to come. I mean, it's really obnoxious. I mean, it grows so quickly, but who's going to be held responsible?
I happened to look at pictures of the different kinds of bamboo, and you can tell where the roots are coming from. So I would imagine it depends upon where the roots are coming from.
Okay.
From the more invasive, you'd have to trace back quite a bit.
Thank you.
All right. On the favorable committee report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 90 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 144, Delegate Chi, Real Estate Brokers, Inactive Licenses Requirements After Expiration, favorable.
Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City and County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill addresses licensure to be a Maryland realtor, and it's specifically around the ability of individuals who have a license. Your license is active for 3 years. In order to get a license, you have to take a test, and you also have to keep up with continuing education requirements. At the end of the third year, you can renew based on, yes, you've kept up with your continuing education requirements and you pay your fee. However, currently there's another option where you can simply make your license inactive, and then you can have another 3 years to activate your license. However, you do not have the requirement to keep up with the continuing education requirements. This bill would make it that any inactive licensee who wishes to activate their license must abide by the continuing education requirements in order to obtain and reactivate their license. This bill was voted unanimously by the committee. There are no committee amendments, so I ask for your adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 144 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Is that the last on that calendar? Nope. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 834, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Requirements, Electric Vehicle Charging Reliability Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a nice complement to another bill we have on the floor dealing with our electric vehicle infrastructure in our state. And this builds upon an existing pilot program that we've had in place in the state of Maryland since 2019. So specifically, the bill, as it came in, requires an electric company that installs or maintains electric vehicle charging stations for public use or that participates in the EV pilot program to maintain an average annual uptime of at least 97% across the charging network. We want to make sure these stations are reliable. The bill also requires the public service, and this is probably the most important part of the bill, to the Public Service Commission to expand the current electric vehicle pilot program to allow participating electric companies to now install EV charging stations in new and existing multifamily dwellings in underserved communities through December 31st, 2025, when this will sunset. We've had conversation on the other bill about the challenges we face as a state getting infrastructure into those multi-family dwelling areas in underserved communities. And all this is subject to reasonable cost limitations balanced with the public interest. There's a number of new related reporting requirements that are established in this piece of legislation. That said, Mr. President, there are 2 committee amendments Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 clarifies the termination of the multifamily piling program does not impact EV programs that were in effect prior to the implementation of this bill. It removes the 97% uptime requirement and changes that standard to either federal standards that are currently in place or another standard approved by the Public Service Commission, and modifies the quarterly report by the Public Service Commission by removing the requirement that the report include the rate of successful completion. This pilot program has resulted since 2019 something in over 900 charging stations around the state, and these are public places. Just for the body's edification, we're talking about property leased, owned, or occupied by state, county, or municipal governments. That's the current pilot. This would now allow the electric companies to go into the multifamily dwelling areas of our state. So this is, again, part of an ongoing policy call, I think, in this legislature to expand and build the electric vehicle infrastructure of the state of Maryland. So with that, Mr. President, I'd move the favorable report and the 2 committee amendments as well.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader yield, please.
Something told me I knew you were going to ask questions about this one.
You did an excellent job right at the very end, because I was going to ask what the PSC's pilot program allowed and why it was necessary to expand this. But the point that you made was the current PSC order only requires it to occur on public spaces?
Correct. And so this will allow them and require the Public Service Commission to allow the electric companies to go into, again, as I mentioned earlier, the multi-family dwelling areas. And as you recall from our discussion about the other bill that's currently sitting on the floor in another calendar, that's an area where the private sector there's been a bit of a market failure, to be candid. We didn't, ultimately we pared back that other bill to not require for new construction private sector, but this allows, I think, some infrastructure build up in those multifamily dwelling areas. Again, in the other bill, we put some of those issues to a study for the private sector, new construction and the like. But yes, so that this is expanding upon the current program and it sunsets. I just want to make this point. Two things, because I know you're going to probably always interested in cost. We specifically put language in here, subject to reasonable cost limitations balanced with the public interest. We sunset it December 31st, 2025. So that's one thing. Another thing we put in place here is that we're talking about this new added, expanded, we're talking about level 2 chargers, which are lower cost issues. And then the revenue let's just leave it at that. So there was a clear attempt to pilot this, sunset it, let's look at the costs, let's see how this works, and in 2 years' time we'll make an assessment about this pilot and then the broader role of this program that's been in existence since 2019.
So just question on the sunset. Is the sunset just for, it looks like what it says, item 1, that's the allowing or the expansion into the private sector?
Yeah, the way we've written this, because we already have an existing program, so if you look at sort of the reprint, I mean, this will not impact the ability of the current the companies, the chargers, the 900 some chargers that are already out there. You still want to have the ability of the electric companies to maintain those, keep them in place. Yeah. So the sunset is specifically only for this added addition dealing with the multifamily dwelling units. So we're trying to keep this very modest, targeted as much as we can.
And then just real quickly, with respect to the pilot program itself, have we heard, as the PSC heard back then, how this is moving forward? And again, questions as I figured I was going to answer evolving around the cost of this. The assumption is if the public utilities are installing this infrastructure, that they could bill this back through cost recovery?
Yeah, as for this expanded portion of the bill, you'll see there's a whole bunch of data and requirements. Actually, some of the things that you incorporated on the other bill into some study language, but beyond that, twice a year, the Public Service Commission, I think, does some kind of a report, and so exactly. and then they have to, if they get updates, and the PSC can modify this order. And if, for example, even here with the charger reliability, if it turns out that these chargers that are out there aren't reliable, the Public Service Commission can require the electric companies to come up with a corrective plan. So there's a lot of back and forth. The Public Service Commission is very involved with this pilot. Again, this bill is simply building on the existing pilot to get into this additional area of multifamily dwellings.
And I do understand that. Again, my concern, though, is that we are expanding the pilot program that would now allow more charging stations and more infrastructure spread out throughout the state and now into these underserved areas. But that does come at a cost to ratepayers, right? That we, the distribution and the equipment are still, because it's through the public utilities, can still be recovered through higher rates to ratepayers, right?
Right. I mean, you are correct, and as I say, because we're not going to be able to avoid that. I mean, at the end of the day, whether it was the builders with new construction, and we talked about some of that cost, or here trying to build it as we've adapted and adopted the California emission standards, and as we've discussed, this is where we're moving. We've got to build out that infrastructure, so it does come at a cost, but I will emphasize this pilot, we're going to get a lot of data, and at the end of the pilot, we'll probably have to make an assessment as to whether this pilot's worth it. The economics work for our state and the ratepayer impacts. That's all going to be out there for public consumption to analyze at the end of the pilot. That's why it's a pilot.
All right, and I understand. I don't know that it's unavoidable, though. I do think that we are, again, either creating or following, in the case of California, policy that will require more EVs on the road. Therefore, we do need this infrastructure, but it doesn't have to be done by the public utilities. I mean, private sector could go out and install charging stations, correct?
Well, certainly the two things. Number one, that's why in part we specifically put this language in, subject to reasonable cost limitations, balanced with the public interest. That's number one. The Public Service Commission needs to sign off on all this. So if the ratepayer impacts get out of whack, the Public Service can say no go. And number one. Number two. So I mean it's ultimately the Public Service. I would also why don't we just say that language was specifically directed to that balancing test, and you're right. There's a tension there for sure.
But unfortunately, to add to this, we come up with a new term called uptime, and I'm assuming that is the reliability of these charging stations?
Correct. So, these are out there. We have 900 some around the state, and we want to make sure that people aren't utilizing them and they're, not working half the time or 45% of whatever. Back to your prior question about impact on ratepayers, I did want to emphasize again, I think in the past I've made this point and you haven't been persuaded that it's compelling, but our Office of People's Counsel did weigh in on this piece of legislation. They're our watchdog for ratepayers, and they believe that on balance, in the end, long run, it'll have a positive impact on ratepayers. So they actually support this piece of legislation. Just wanted to throw that into the mix.
My thoughts on People's Counsel right now is that it might have a positive impact, but it certainly also has a increase in ratepayer cost that might get somehow reduced. But just going back to uptime, because I just want to make sure that I understand it.
I just want to be clear on the uptime. The bill as it came in had this 97% reliability. We amended it to comply with, there are federal standards in place. And if you look in the reprint or in the amendments, you'll see that we took out that 97%, but now the reliability is going to be in accordance with the federal national electric vehicle infrastructure standards and requirements, or some alternative uptime standards and requirements approved by the Commission. And again, if it turns out that these are not reliable chargers, the Public Service Commission actually has the authority to come in and actually fine the electric companies for not maintaining these in an appropriate way. So that's actually some additional language we're incorporating into this piece of legislation, which I think makes the whole program a bit stronger.
Okay. I appreciate your responses. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. Questions on the two amendments? Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel on the amendments.
Yeah, if the floor leader would yield, and I normally don't get up on our committee, but this was one I'm still trying to understand. I actually abstained in committee because things are going very quickly. So if I understand, the first pilot was public areas, and then this one is going to underserved areas, solely to underserved areas. Is that?
That's the expanded portion of the bill, is allowing the electric companies, yes, to install own chargers in those areas. Currently, that's not authorized under the current pilot.
Okay, and then just for the policy point, underserved areas are typically low income and so forth.
Yeah, it's specifically defined in the bill. So you can, the underserved, that is a term defined specifically in the bill.
And so we're building out the infrastructure, and so I guess my policy question is, if it's solely to the underserved community, are we convinced that there is a large need for electric chargers in those areas?
Yes, I think that's the whole point. The main part of this bill is, over the past 3 years since 2019, 900 some chargers have been built out around the state, but it's these areas are the ones where it's not happening. I mean, just more fundamentally, the private sector's not stepping in. These units are not, and we have some challenges. We have another bill that would try to get into this. So I think this is addressing a bit of a private sector market failure to some extent. But yes, it is a problem. It's a major problem.
So my question is the demand, knowing that typically lower income are not going to buy the higher expensive electric vehicles, and we're investing in there solely. So I'm just saying, from a policy standpoint, when we decided to just put it in low income areas, will it be utilized as we're building out, and I guess why only low income areas?
Well, it's not. This is an it's everywhere else now, public, areas. This is expanding it. I think that if you can't charge your the car, you're never going to buy one of these things, and there are lower cost EVs. No matter where you come down and where you live, you need the capacity to charge if you're going to in the market to purchase an electric vehicle. The folks who live in these areas should not be excluded simply by virtue of where they live, and that is the situation right now. There's just a massive, massive shortage in those communities, and that's what this bill, by expanding the current pilot, is attempting to address.
Okay.
It's a market failure. The private sector hasn't stepped in, so this is a bit of a partial remedy.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Questions on the two amendments? Any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the minority leader on the amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The floor leader just continue to yield just based on a couple of statements.
Senator may proceed.
I don't know if I'd say right away that the private sector has failed in this category. There's a firm right out here in Bowie, in the Medford Park, that is doing an outstanding job trying to get charging stations out to market. But obviously, when you have the big utility companies competing against private sector, I think that puts the private sector at a disadvantage. And what we're doing right now through this legislation is giving the utility companies another leg up on this. My question is, and this goes back to the PSC's testimony, it says HB 834 will increase utility costs for the distribution system related to the work and upgrades. My question is, on the 900 charging stations that are out already,
in public areas.
Yeah, in the public areas. Is there a cost to charge your car, or are those free?
There's a cost, and in fact, I think you asked this as part of the study in the other bill, but yes, there is a charge, and actually some of the revenue, depending on who the owner. Yeah, there is a charge, but those portion of the revenue in this program, under this pilot, actually gets utilized to help mitigate the costs that then the electric utilities go back to try to recover. So it's all part of, I think, but the answer is yes, and depending on which company, it can either be a credit card or it could be your phone. So yes, there is a revenue. You're paying for the electricity just like you would going to a gas station, filling up your car with gasoline.
Okay, all right, so the electric companies are bringing in some type of revenue from selling the electricity, and the revenue can offset obviously the cost of electricity, but it also could offset the infrastructure that's in place.
That's my understanding.
That's what the PSC is.
Right. So when the Public Service Commission reviews all this, I think that's all part of the mix, because every twice a year, 3 times, they're reporting back to the Public Service Commission. I just want to emphasize this is a pilot program, and when the data's in, we may revisit this or abandon it or repeal it. But yes, that's kind of how it works currently. And this is just, again, a very narrowly tailored expansion of a current program that's been in existence since 2019.
Yeah. No, and I think we're all going to wait for the data to see what that says, and is this a worthwhile expansion of this? And at the same time, I'm interested in finding out, is the ability of the public utilities getting into this market holding out private sector or making it more difficult for private sector to join this? So those are the questions.
I mean, I think these are all legit questions, which is why it's a pilot program.
I understand. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Questions on the 2 amendments? Any further discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 834 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1011, Delegate Stein, Public Safety, Refrigerants, Limitations on Use, favorable.
Chair recognizes Senator from District 10 as the floor leader.
Mr. President, House Bill 1011 is nearly identical to Senate Bill 741 as unanimously passed by the Senate. The bill establishes that, except for regulations issued by the Maryland Department of Environment, no provisions of the state building code or law or regulations may prohibit or otherwise limit the use of a refrigerant if, 1, the refrigerant is designed as an acceptable for use in accordance with the specific provisions of the Federal Clean Air Act, and 2, any appliance containing the refrigerant is installed and used in accordance with the federal safety standards and use condition. There are no committee amendments. There's no fiscal impact. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1011 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1188, Delegate Atterbury, Public Utilities Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, Solar Voltaic Systems, favorable of 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator from Howard and Montgomery Counties as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 1188 is the exact cross-file of Senate Bill 931, which had no opposition and passed our committee unanimously. As amended, both bills are identical. The bill defines generating stations in the Public Utilities article. It establishes that generating units or facilities that meet specified requirements may be constructed without obtaining a CPCN. There were 2 committee amendments. The first makes technical changes, and the second one limits the co-located CPCN exemption in solar photovoltaic projects and net energy metering generators, and prohibits the total capacity of these co-located projects from exceeding 14 megawatts. The amendment also codifies provisions related to aggregate net metering and adds state governments and agencies and higher education institutions to the provisions. I move the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1188 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. All right, we have a Senate bill. This is report number 51 from Education, Energy, and the Environment. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 30, Senator Kagan, Public Safety 311 System, Non-Emergency Information, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You all know that 911 is understaffed and has enormous challenges. One of the ways that we have been seeking to address this for the last several years, including with our statewide commission, is to try to create a statewide 311 system. As you all know, that's for non-emergency use, whether it's animal control or what day is my recycling getting picked up this week or where can I get a COVID vaccine. Those folks are too often still calling our 911 centers. So we spent a lot of time, several years, working on the right legislation, and it was suggested for fiscal reasons that we consider merging 311 with 211. And again, just for folks who may be listening at home, 211 is an existing statewide program, and that is for urgent social services. So I need a bed, I'm homeless tonight, or I need food, and that has been working. It's also health check-ins, if they do really important work. So the idea of having an existing structure, infrastructure, with people who have already been trained and take those calls made a lot of sense. 211 is currently located in the Maryland Department of Health and has also been handling what is now our 988 calls. So crisis calls or suicide, those are now being handled by 988. So we've got all these 3-digit numbers, and we want to serve all Marylanders who need government help or information. And so, so there were 2 stuck points with a bill that we brought this year. One is, as we want to merge 211 into 311, there were a lot of details that we wanted to make sure we handled. There are also questions about training, infrastructure, and cost, and some really small issues like when are the computers going to be outdated in the 6 counties that already have a county 311. So in any case, it was recommended that we ask DLS, the Department of Legislative Services, to procure some of this information, get us this data, so that we have a really thoughtful bill ready to come next year and move 311 from the Department of Emergency Management, which is what we proposed, move 211 from the Department of Health, where it is now, and move both together into the Department of Human Services, which is totally overloaded right now, but eager to be a partner after we get all the details ironed out. So this is so there are 2 amendments. The first is technical, and the second is to create a study that will get us the information, so Maryland can be the first state in the country to have a statewide 311 that would roll out over a few years and be ready to go. So with that, I move the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 30 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. All right, let's go to Budget and Tax. Report number 34. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 622, Delegate Shi, Economic Development Industry 4.0 Technology Grant Program, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Mr. President, this is the cross-file of the Manufacturing 4.0 bill that we passed earlier, the Senate version. There are no amendments. They're both in the same form. Move favorable report.
All right, the floor leader moves that we adopt the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 622 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. Move to judicial proceedings. Report number 37. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 20, Delegate Lehman, Vehicle Laws, Horse Riding, Helmet Requirement for Minors, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill generally prohibits an adult who is present and directly supervising a minor from allowing the minor to ride a horse in a specified area unless the minor is wearing a helmet that meets or exceeds the standards of the American Society of Testing and Materials for Protective Headgear used in equestrian riding. There are no committee amendments. I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to see if we could special order this for the next session that we have.
All right, questions on the special order? Let's check with the chair.
Sounds okay to me, just as a general inquiry, if the senator would provide a reason.
I have a concern about some of the language, something from last year that when this bill was defeated in the House, so I'd like to see if I could work on it.
Okay, I think point of inquiry, this bill did come to our committee last year in the House, so it was not defeated in the House.
Okay.
Just point of information.
All right.
Concern I want to check on why it did not pass. Thank you.
All right.
Correct.
Yeah,
Questions
that's
on
fine
the,
by me.
on the special order? Any objections? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time for the following session. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 70, Delegate Shakoudian, Safe Access for All Safe Roads Act of 2023, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill requires the Maryland Department of Transportation to implement all practicable, incremental, and near-term safety improvements as soon as practicable when a new approved pedestrian or bicycle safety construction or improvement project is projected to take more than 12 months to complete. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 clarifies that the bill applies to all practicable, incremental, and near safety improvements. Mr. President, I move the favorable committee report and the 2 amendments.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for legislative history purposes, when you use the word practicable, let me give you a hypothetical case. A decision is made to build a new Cabin John Bridge. And the new bridge is going to contain a walkway, a lane for bicycles and pedestrians. But the current Cabin John Bridge doesn't have that. And the new bridge is going to take a while to build. So they could spend a lot of money to add an additional lane made of wood on the side of the existing bridge to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists, but that would be very expensive. So when you use the word practicable in this bill, does that require the authorities who are considering whether or not to take these steps to consider the cost at the same time as they're making a decision whether to take these steps?
Thank you, Senator. That's a good question. Yes, the word practicable means that they should consider the cost. If the cost is excessive, then the project is no longer practicable and therefore not necessary.
All right. Questions on the amendments? Any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 70 is hereby ordered passed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 123, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, Vehicle Laws, HOV Lanes, Plug-in Electric Drive Vehicles, favorable. This is an emergency bill.
Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. This legislation, House Bill 123, which did pass the committee unanimously in a vote of all who were present at the voting session, it reestablishes the HOV lane plug-in electric drive vehicles program just for 2 more years. So it will terminate September 30th, 2025, and it will allow vehicles that are plug-in electric vehicles to utilize the HOV lanes, which is something we established back in 2010. There are no committee amendments. Move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority leader on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Floor leader, would you yield, please?
Absolutely.
Senator may proceed.
This is an emergency bill. We currently have this law in place, but I guess it expired September last year.
Yes.
So we're renewing it for that. Question I have is, within this bill, it says that MVA may charge a fee for this permit for allowing electric vehicles to use the HOV lanes.
Yes.
Do we know, has MVA charged a fee for that in the past?
They have not charged a fee for that in the past. They're authorized to charge up to $20, but it's not something they have done in the past.
Do you know in committee testimony if they had talked about whether they would or not charge a fee?
I think it is under consideration, but there's been no determination yet.
Okay. Because this is another interesting debate that we're getting in about electric vehicles one, using the roads for free to begin with, since they're not contributing to the Transportation Trust Fund, but now also kind of giving them a benefit to use HOV lanes that doesn't necessarily need to be provided to them, but I know that the body's intention is to incentivize these vehicles, but I would think a fee of $20 would be reasonable for charging for this permit.
Absolutely. The legislation allows up to a $20 fee, and it also allows them to cap the number of these permits that are available based on utilization of the HOV lane. So it's responsible in that regard. And also, I would say that the bill came in with 10 years, and actually it was amended by the House to be only 2 years. So this can all be reevaluated in 2 years, which is consistent with the timelines we've been talking about for electric vehicles in other areas.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think I'd like to evaluate it after 2 years that we've already had it in place. And I think we'd probably need to be a little bit stronger about the cost of the fee. So the House bill, I can address that on third reader. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, question is on the report. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 123 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 127, Delegate Moon, District Court Small Claims Enforcement of Money Judgments, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill prohibits the District Court in a small claims action from 1, ordering the appearance of an individual for an examination in aid of enforcement of a money judgment, and 2, ordering an individual to answer interrogatories in aid of execution of a money judgment. There are no committee amendments. I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 127 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. All right, that does it for our second readers. Let's go back. Actually, can we ring the bells, Madam Secretary? And let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
All right. The senator from the 42nd. All right. The clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Let's take up these two concurrences that we had before that were on a special order to the end here. Start with 280. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 280, Senator Guile, Child Care Providers Registration Licensing Exemptions. Motion to concur with the House amendments.
Recognizing the Chair of the Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. In general, Senate Bill 280 authorizes certain child care providers operated on federal property and certified by the Department of Defense or the Coast Guard to be exempt from state licensing requirements. The House amendment is technical and conforms the bill to House Bill 292. Mr. President, the committee moves to concur.
All right, the chair moves to concur with the House amendments. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the Senate concurs with the House amendments. Senate Bill 280 is again before the Senate on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded the vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 280, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the next one is the special order. Yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Senate Bill 422, Senator Bailey, Natural Resources Black Bass Conservation Fund Establishment. Motion to concur with the House amendments.
Recognizing the Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bill establishes a Black Bass Conservation Fund in the Department of Natural Resources consisting of voluntary monetary donations made by the individuals at the time of purchasing a recreational fishing license to be used for black bass stalking, habitat enhancement, tournaments, and conservation research. The House amendments allow interest earnings on the fund or of the fund to be credited to the fund. This change conforms the bill to House Bill 696 as unanimously passed by the Senate. Mr. President, the committee concurs with the House amendments.
All right. The chair moves to concur with the House amendments. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the Senate concurs with the House amendments. Senate Bill 422 is again before the Senate on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 422, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we're going to make a deal. If we can we're going to stop at 1:45, hard stop. If we get through all of this by 1:45, no afternoon session. But if we don't, we come back at 4. So that'll be we'll see how we go. So we'll do the best. We'll do the best we can. But either way's fine. Either way's fine. Either way's fine. That's going to be our plan. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to start with third reading calendar number 32. Clerk will read the first bill. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 2, Delegate J. Lewis, Income Tax Subtraction Modification Union Dues.
House Bill 2 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? Chair recognizes the Minority Whip.
A few thoughts about this bill. Bad tax policy, Mr. President, bad tax policy. We need to figure out how we can have a subtraction modification for people who pay dues to all professional organizations, perhaps, not just single out one particular favored group. So I will be voting red on this bill. And I have a few thoughts I'd like to read word for word. Just kidding. Voting red.
All right. On the bill, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee.
I just briefly want to explain my vote. I appreciate the bipartisan support for this bill.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. All right. With 34 votes to go, Chair recognizes the
Thank you,
Chair of
Mr.
the
President.
Committee.
Sorry, my button didn't work. I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Okay. All right. Without objections, any objection? Without objection, so ordered. The 34 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 2 is passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 103, Delegate Bagnall, State Board of Social Work Examiners, temporary license to practice social work.
House Bill 103 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 103 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 282, Delegate Queen, Financial Institutions, Morgan Loan, Originators, Independent Contractors.
House Bill 282 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 282 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 502, Delegate R. Lewis, Department of Human Services, Electronic Benefits Transfer Cards, Theft of Benefits, Prevent Electronic Benefits Theft Act of 2023. This is an emergency bill.
House Bill 502 is on third reading for final passage. This is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 502 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 571, Delegate Kipke, Opioids, Opioid Restitution Advisory Council Fund and Overdose Response Program.
House Bill 571 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 571 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 676, Delegate Weigel, Cemeteries, Pet Remains, Duty of Perpetual Care.
House Bill 676 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 676, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Let's go to calendar 35. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 267, Delegate Bartlett, Family Law, Maryland Child Abduction Prevention Act.
House Bill 267 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 267 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 411, Delegate Embry, criminal procedure violation of pretrial or post-trial condition by incarcerated person, victim contact.
House Bill 411 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 411 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 427, Delegate Cardin, criminal procedure, medical emergency immunity.
House Bill 427 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 427 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 535, Delegate Feldmark, election law, ballots, issuance, processing, reporting, and procedures.
House Bill 535 is on third reading for final passage. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment I wanted to offer on this bill.
All right, pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment very speedily. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill deals with, among other things, how you can be contacted to cure a ballot, a mailed ballot. And one of the things that I noticed when the bill went through before it went over to that, or when the Senate went over to the House, I was concerned about one item. We have mobile telephone. You can be texted that you can cure your ballot, that you need to come cure your ballot, and I've just had a lot of concern because, you know, in the world where we now all are dealing with cell phones, our cell phone numbers change more than I think people realize. I still have people that communicate with me, and I find out they've been trying to reach me, and I changed my cell phone number like a dozen years ago, and I still have people who have that number. I've had other people raise issues with me of security with cell phones, with text message. Now, it's different when you get called on the phone because you're at least speaking to somebody, but there's also an issue where a lot of us have been plagued by spam or scam text messaging. The senator from Montgomery County, we're working to crack down on the spam phone calls, but their spam texting is still a problem. And so people will get something and not know that it's trustworthy. So this amendment would just remove mobile telephone, and it would remove the section about texting to be contacted for curing your ballot. So I would move my amendment, Mr. President.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, text to cure has already been tried. Last year in Montgomery County, there were a whopping 17 voters who used it. And to be clear, this isn't in your record from a dozen years ago. This is when you send in your mail-in ballot request, you can include your very current, the one you're using right now, phone number, and that's the number. Even that is insufficient to make sure that we have secure voting systems, because our local boards of elections, who have the option of doing this and starting to implement it, will still require that you have your first and last name, your date of birth, the last four of your social security number, your driver's license number. There are security checks to make sure that the person who will be casting the vote, will be curing their ballot through their cell phone, through text, is the person who is representing themselves that way. And just a reminder, if there were someone who was trying to vote fraudulently, that is already a felony. The amendment is unnecessary and unhelpful. I urge my colleagues to please resist the amendment and vote red.
All right, on the amendment, the chair recognizes the minority whip. Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just feel like based on so many things that we hear about where people texting can be manipulated, it can be done wrong, and again, cell phones they change hands, and so you have a family member access to somebody's phone. There's a lot of different areas that I think it would just be best. I'd like to ask for a roll call to remove text messaging, because we're not just talking about how the state board of elections, or I'm sorry, the county board of elections communicates with you. You're allowed to text back, and so I think it's just a little bit hazy. So I would ask for a roll call on removing that from the bill.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 35 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. House Bill 535 is again before us. Senator has an amendment. Pages will, yes?
Yes, I do have an amendment, Mr.
All right,
President.
Pages will collect and deliver the Senator's amendment.
And I'll keep it brief. Could have a longer conversation, but I understand where we are. I had ordered these amendments before you made the deadline.
No, it's okay. Either outcome is all right. Either one.
So yeah, I mean, it's fine with me, but yeah, anyway, okay. Mr. President, this amendment, we raised this issue, our caucus raised this issue before, and I actually think this is very serious, a serious issue. We have an issue with ballot harvesting. As we go to more and more mail-in balloting, there is a concern, it's a problem nationwide, where there are groups of people, there are political parties, it happens on both sides, that engage in the process of going and collecting absentee or mail-in ballots from people. And you'll have situations where someone has gone and as a representative, sometimes of an organization, but sometimes just on their own, is collecting large sums of ballots to go and submit. There was a famous situation a couple of election cycles ago where a North Carolina congressman had to resign, or I guess not take office, because they were found to have violated that it was a mass, and it was a Republican, massive sort of fraudulent or semi-fraudulent scheme in collecting these ballots. Maryland really is very silent on how much or how limited you can undertake the idea that you can go and collect ballots for people and go and take them. And we really don't have a policy on that. So what this amendment tries to do is just limit. We know that family and friends will sometimes help, particularly an elderly relative or some elderly folks that they know, or maybe their daughter that's at college away and mails their ballot back to the house for whatever reason. We know that people will occasionally do this, so we don't want to say it shouldn't happen. But what this amendment does, and it's, I think, a very generous, broad amendment, is it just says no one person should be able to pick up more than 10 absentee ballots and deliver them during elections. It's trying to give a little bit of a ceiling to it so that we don't have an industry springing up. Because I'm going to tell you right now, both parties will have industry springing up more and more around ballot harvesting. And I think we should have some kind of limit. I think 10 is good because that pretty much covers, if you've got 3 or 4 family members, just 10 is a plenty big limit. So I would move the amendment, Mr. President, and I think it's friendly, but if it's not friendly, I'll ask for a roll call.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
I'm afraid we are not feeling friendly today on this amendment. This is not needed. Just because we call it something that sounds scary or fraudulent doesn't mean that it exists, doesn't mean it's a problem in Maryland, and doesn't mean that it's a problem we need to address in this legislation. If there's a nursing home or some other community that wants to offer a service to its residents so that they don't have to figure out a way to pay for postage if they voted in another manner and it's not postage paid, so they don't have to find their way to a drop-off box. It's a service that can be offered. And again, the same thing I said last time. It's a felony to vote for someone else. These are people who have legally, lawfully completed their own ballots and want to make sure that they get in, submitted, and counted on time. Would resist the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, but I just rise in strong support of the amendment. It's a safeguard. I don't understand why we would not want to put a safeguard in. We put safeguards in so people have trust in the system overall. So I think it's a good amendment, and I would urge the body to support it.
All right. Any senators who have not yet spoken? Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Just to follow up, we would have no idea if it was a problem in Maryland right now. We wouldn't know because we don't have any rules about it. And it is a felony, of course, to fraudulently vote. It's also a felony to destroy a ballot. But is it a crime if you go represent yourself as somebody who's helping the local Democratic or Republican Party or the local whatever group, and you collect a whole bunch of ballots, and then maybe you forgot to drop some of them off? Maybe you did on purpose, maybe you didn't. There's no real rules about it. So this is an amendment. I'd love a green vote from my colleagues to just say, let's just have some baseline standard on this. If you can't hand deliver more than 10 ballots that aren't your own. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 32 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 535 is on third reading for final passage. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from 23rd.
Sorry, Mr. President. I'd like to be voted in the red for the last vote.
And the last one. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 33 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 535, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 551, the Speaker, Office of Statewide Broadband Study of Broadband Expansion Incentives.
House Bill 551 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 45 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 551 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 910, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, Energy Storage Targets and Maryland Energy Storage Program Establishment.
House Bill 910 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 37 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 910 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 983, Delegate Allen, Hunting, Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Recreation, Funding, Promotion, Management, License, Stamps, and Permits.
House Bill 983 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 983 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City, Baltimore County.
Yes, thank you. Mr. President, I'd like to be recorded in the green in HB 551.
551 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from the 41st.
Thank you. Mr. President?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Could I please be recorded in the red, changing from green to red on SB 535, Amendment 403529?
The second amendment from green to red.
Second amendment.
Yes. All right. All right. All right. Green to red. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I be recorded in the red, House Bill 910, please?
In the red on 910. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right. Let's go to calendar number 38. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 12, Delegate J. Lewis, Equitable and Inclusive Transit-Oriented Development Enhancement Act.
All right. House Bill 12 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 36 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 12 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 261, Delegate Kerr, Public Projects Procurement of Construction Materials by Clean Maryland Act.
House Bill 261 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 39 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 261 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 424, Delegate Simpson, State Retirement and Pension Systems, Non-Vested Accounts, Regular Interest.
House Bill 424 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 424 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 448, Delegate Corman, Non-Public Education Placements of Children with Disabilities, Teacher Salaries, Teacher Pay Parity Act. This is an emergency bill.
House Bill 448 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 448 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 541, Delegate Forbes, State Retirement and Pension Systems, Earnable Compensation, Non-Vested Former Members, and Immediate Vesting.
House Bill 541 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 541 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 687, Delegate Cardin, Estates and Trust, Decanting, Maryland Trust Decanting Act.
House Bill 687 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 687 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 803, Delegate Forbes, State Retirement and Pension Systems, Administrative Fees.
House Bill 803 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 803 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 816, Delegate Phillips, Procurement, Minority Business Enterprises, and Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprises Participation Goal Scorecard.
House Bill 816 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 816 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. All right, to calendar 27, out of finance. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 258, Delegate Aaron's, Caroline and Queen Anne's Counties, Alcoholic Beverage Licenses, Residence Requirements.
House Bill 258 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 258 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 454, Delegate Lopez, Health Occupations, License Certificates, Registration, Lawful Presence, and Identification Numbers.
House Bill 454 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 38 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 454 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 456, Delegate Guyton, State Board of Pharmacy, Accessible Prescription Labels, Bag Tags, and Medical Guides for Blind, Visually Impaired, and Print Disabled Vehicles.
House Bill 456 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 456 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 863, Delegate Bartlett, Public Health, Chief Medical Examiner, Corrections to Autopsy Findings and Conclusions.
House Bill 863 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 863 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 977, Delegate Pena Melnick, Maryland Department of Health, Office of the Chief Medical Examiner.
House Bill 977 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If the call. 47 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 977 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1084, Delegate Adams, Natural Resources, Oyster Inspection, and Severance Taxes Increase.
House Bill 1084 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1084 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1087, Wicomico County Delegation, Wicomico County Sunday Hunting, Archery, Hunting Safety Zones.
House Bill 1087 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1087 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1146, Delegate Kipke, Maryland Department of Health and Maryland Health Care Commission Dental Services Survey and Regional Needs Assessment. This is an emergency bill.
House Bill 1146 is on third reading for final passage. This is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1146 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read, well, let's go to 28, calendar 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 596, Delegate Kerr, Health and Human Services Transportation Improvement Act of 2023.
House Bill 596 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 596 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 615, Delegate Ampry, Work Group on Black, Latino, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and other underrepresented behavioral health professionals, extension of dates.
House Bill 615 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 615 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 669, Delegate Holmes, Real Estate Appraisers Licensing and Certification Qualifications.
House Bill 669 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone reported their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 669 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 781, Delegate Atterbury, Maryland Technology Development Corporation, Equitech Growth Fund and Commission.
House Bill 781 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 781 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 884, Baltimore City Delegation, Baltimore City Insurance Certificates of Guarantee for County Bond Requirements.
House Bill 884 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 884 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 885, Delegate Ampry, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages Related Event Promoters Permit.
House Bill 885 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 885 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1159, Delegate Collison, State Board of Dental Examiners, University of Maryland School of Dentistry faculty qualifying for examination.
House Bill 1159 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1159 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. From HB 781 from nay to yay, please.
781, nay to yay. Senator from the 27th. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 596 to green.
596 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Any others? Chair recognizes the senator from the Baltimore City, Baltimore County.
Thank you. I'd like to be recorded in green HB 910.
910 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, we're going to take a vote. A green vote is to do a 15-minute extension and clear it out. A red vote is to say we come back at 4. A green vote, a green vote, a green vote. Now everything comes up. We got a whole new, yeah. So, all right. So green vote is 15 more minutes. Red vote is to come back at 4. Are we all clear? The clerk will call the roll.
Mr.
So
President,
green is 15 more minutes. Red vote is to close. Uh-oh. Is everyone?
Mr. President, I'd like to explain my amendment.
All right. We will take the call, and we're going to pull up calendar number 31. All right, clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 21, Delegate Atterbury, Property Tax, Tax Sales, Notices, and Payoff Amounts for Redemption.
House Bill 21 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 21 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 43, Delegate Atterbury, property tax sales payment of balance after foreclosure.
House Bill 43 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 43 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 57, Delegate Atterbury, property tax sales requirements to sell.
House Bill 57 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 57 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 83, Delegate Atterbury, property tax sales redemption.
House Bill 83 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 83 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 458, Delegate J. Lewis, Public Schools Construction Programs Approvals Administration Alterations.
House Bill 458 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 6 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 458 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 677, Delegate Clippinger, Pride of Baltimore 2, Appropriations Extension.
House Bill 677 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative, 46 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 677 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 680, Delegate Tolles, Income Tax, Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit Alterations.
House Bill 680 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 680 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 947, Charles County Delegation, Charles County Project Tax Credit for Volunteer Emergency Responders.
House Bill 947 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 947 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk, we've got calendar 34. Clerk will read the first bill.
Mr. President?
Oh, yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the 38th.
Just wanted to make sure I was recorded in the green for HB 458, please.
458, confirm in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk, first bill.
House Bill 23, Delegate Stewart, Mobile and Manufactured Homes Relocation Plans and Sales of Communities Manufactured Housing Modernization Act of 2023.
House Bill 23 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 23 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 36, Delegate Lehman, Real Property Actions to Repossess Proof of Rental Licensure.
House Bill 36 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 47 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 36 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 92, Delegate Holmes, Ground Leases, Collection of Rent, Interest, Fees, and Other Expenses, Registration Requirements.
House Bill 92 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 92 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 93, Delegate Holmes, Residential Ground Leases, Redemption, Extinguishment Requirements.
House Bill 93 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 93 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 244, Delegate Terrassa, Estates and Trust Registers of Wills, Electronic Filing and Signatures.
House Bill 244 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 244 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 706, Delegate A. Jones, Community Development Sustainable Communities Business Facade Improvement Program.
House Bill 706 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 706, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1002, Delegate Foley, Commercial Vehicles Police Initiated Towing Alterations.
House Bill 1002 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1002, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1178, Calvert County Delegation, Calvert County Length of Service Award Program Benefits.
House Bill 1178 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1178, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. 37. Clerk will read the first bill.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator from District 4.
On the previous 1178, if I could be recorded in the green, please.
1178 in the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 433, Prince George's County Delegation, Prince George's County Office of the Sheriff, Deputy Sheriffs and Labor Organization, PG 308-23.
House Bill 433 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With the 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 433, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 513, Delegate Queen, Investor-Owned Utilities Prevailing Wage Enforcement.
House Bill 513 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 36 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 513, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 695, Delegate Sample Hughes, Rural Maryland Prosperity Investment Fund Allocation of Grants, Rural Communities Improvement Act of 2023.
House Bill 695 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 695, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 700, Talbot County Delegation, Talbot County Speed Monitoring Systems, intersection of Maryland Route 333, Oxford Road and Bonfield Avenue.
All right, House Bill 700 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 39 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 700, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 710, Delegate Bagnell, Anne Arundel County Speed Monitoring Systems Residential Districts.
House Bill 710 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 710, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 870, Delegate Guyton, Division of Rehabilitation Services Development Disabilities Administration Memorandum of Understanding.
House Bill 870 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 870, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1109, Prince George's County Delegation, Prince George's County Economic Development Business Improvement District, PG 407-23.
House Bill 1109 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1109, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1156, Delegate R. Lewis, Pharmacist Therapy Management Contract Form.
House Bill 1156 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1156, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. We're on the downhill slope. We've got some consent calendars. Number 26. Clerk will read the calendar.
third reading House Bill Calendar Number 26, Consent Calendar Number 11.
All right, this is consent calendar number 11. Senators, take a look at the calendar. They are on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? Any separations? Chair recognizes, yes, the minority whip.
I'd like to separate out HB 132.
132, vote separately. Any others? Any others? If not, on all bills on 11 but for 132, any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, bills on consent calendar number 11 having received a constitutional majority are declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 132, Delegate Shi, Heating, Ventilation, Air Conditioning, Refrigeration Services, Journeyman License Qualifications.
Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a discussion about this bill, the Senate version of this bill, early in session, and we passed it. And I actually voted for it because the explanations given were, reasonable, and they still in some ways are. But there's a lot of concern as I talk to more and more people. We've been doing a lot in this state, and we've even been doing a lot this session on licensing reform and making sure that we're not excessively burdening people with the ability to go and earn an income to make a living. Now, I understand the reason why this bill raises the required hours for training before you can take the test. I understand the reasons given that they've had too many people failing the test. But I have a lot of concern about, and I was actually hoping the House might tweak this or make some adjustments, and they did not. I think it's a mistake to just dramatically increase the hours required for this so that you can take your test. My view is if someone's ready to take the test, they ought to be able to take the test after the smaller number of hours that we already have. And so I'm going to be voting no on this bill this time around. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, on the bill, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 132, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we're going to stop there, and we're not going to come back today. So we've got plenty. This is plenty enough to do for the first session tomorrow. Here's the deal, though. We are going to have a long day tomorrow. We're going to have a very, very long day tomorrow. And the goal is we got to, if we can avoid a weekend session, it's going to be at least 2 sessions tomorrow. We probably won't start until 11 for the first one, but then we'll see how far we can get. We may break for a bit and come back, and it'll probably be a later evening session. So keep that in mind as you're kind of keeping your calendar and thoughts about your schedule together. So with that, great job today. We got through a lot of great work. Let's check with the chair. Let's start with the chair of exec nominations.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have report number 9 on your system under other. It's a variety of boards and commissions from this past Monday night, April 3rd. The names of the nominees can be found on your floor system, and I request we consider these nominees in regular session.
One moment. I don't think we have that actually we don't have that report quite yet. We're looking for it.
I have it.
I know it's
number 9.
Oh, well, we have it on the computer. We don't have the physical report.
Oh.
So we can take it up and vote on it the same day tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, let's do this. Let's think about committees first. How much committee work is left? Oh, it's fine. We'll take it up tomorrow. Yeah, Chair recognizes Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand there are delegation meetings happening immediately following session, so Senate Finance will meet at 2:45 for a voting session.
2:45. Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Yeah, Triple E will meet at 2:45 for voting.
2:45. Budget and Tax.
Budget and Tax will meet at 3 o'clock for voting.
3 o'clock. Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judicial Proceedings will meet at 4 o'clock for voting. We've got some work groups that'll be in play in the interim.
Okay, so Chair recognizes the Chair of Executive Nominations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Executive noms will meet at 3:45 in the committee room.
3:45 for executive noms. I know that's what I'm. So Do we want to change anything? Let me think about the timing, because if JPR is at 4, probably it's two nominees, is that correct? Should be a short hearing, presumably.
Mr. President, 2 wonderful nominees, and I expect it to go very quickly, I think.
At 3:45. So maybe there's a pause in voting for members of exec noms. Judicial proceedings?
Thank you, Mr. President. I neglected to mention we have one bill hearing, so we'll have that hearing on one bill at 4 o'clock. We'll follow that with voting.
Okay, that works. I think we should be good. All right, any additional delegations? It sounded like delegations were meeting. Chair of the Montgomery County delegation.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues from OCO, immediately following floor session, we're in the Silver Room. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Any further delegations? If not, any other select committees? Any other announcements before we adjourn? Yes, Chair County Senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder, colleagues, if you please like to sign our Father's Day pledge, it is in the Senate lounge. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further piece of business? If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
All right, we can do the quorum call. Does everyone, clerk can take the call? With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Before we go to the majority leader, let's quickly check with the Rules Committee for an announcement.
You want to make an announcement?
Rules Committee?
Rules Committee does not want to make an announcement.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Let's go with the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Friday, April 7th at 11 a.m.
April 7th at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. All right. Great job today. Without objection. So ordered. Have a phenomenal afternoon.